Hello and welcome to EYTV with me, Brodie. Today is all about the lived experiences of selective mutism, which is a really interesting subject. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Antje Bothin. Dr. Antje has a passion for creative work. She particularly loves travel and takes great pleasure in writing about nature, the human mind, and the world around her. She grew up in Germany and has lived experience of selective mutism, and she has an academic background with a first degree in business engineering and an MSc in information and media technology, and also successfully completed a PhD in information studies at the University of Sheffield. Great university, totally. She also works as a translator and tutor. She's authored scientific papers, short stories, and poems, which is something we're going to be talking about today, and her poems being published in international anthologies. Dr. Antje has recently published her first novel, Annika and the Treasure of Iceland, which is what we're going to be discussing today. And it is the most beautiful book, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. She enjoys living in Scotland, and when not reading, writing, or drinking tea, she can be found cycling in the countryside or volunteering for local charities, which sounds like an ideal life. A very warm welcome onto EYTV, Dr. Antje Bothin.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. As I've said there, today is all about selective mutism and your book, which is a beautiful read. It is just stands alone as a lovely book. But I'd like to start with the selective mutism and really just get an understanding of what it is we mean by selective mutism. So how would you sort of describe or define selective mutism?
Selective mutism is when a person is unable to talk in certain situations, for example, in public, at school, or at work, or in the shop, but they're usually able to speak normally in other situations when they're relaxed, for example, at home with close family.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they're unable to speak at nursery, I'm thinking particularly the earliest professionals who are watching today, how can we spot that then? Because we wouldn't know that they're necessarily talking at home, would we?
Yes, the child would probably talk at home and the parents wouldn't notice anything. But when they come to nursery, they would not speak, and all the other people would notice that, and they would probably tell the parents, your child doesn't talk in nursery. And I think the parents would be surprised and wouldn't want to believe it, but that's kind of the situation that you would encounter.
Yeah. I think that is why it's so important to have that parent partnership as well. So what sort of challenges is that going to give for children? And we'll talk about adults as well in a minute, but start with children. What sort of challenges is that going to give children in the world around them?
Yeah, it's very hard, I think, because speaking is the number one means of communication, especially face to face. And there are lots of misunderstandings. For example, if the person doesn't greet people when they arrive, and people might think the person is rude, doing that intentionally. So there's a lot of problems that could happen.
Yeah. And of course, if we let that go into adulthood, you get all sorts of additional problems on that as well, don't you?
Yeah, there are problems with work, with relationships, or for children and teenagers, problems at school, because you have to take part in the lessons, in group discussions, you have to say what you need, what you want, and all these things cause problems.
Yeah. So what is it that we can then do to support children? How can we help children who find themselves in this circumstance?
I think it's important to create an environment that is friendly and that helps the person to relax, and so that they can open up and start talking, and the person doesn't need any pressure. Like, you shouldn't force them to speak if they're not ready. You just give them space and time. For example, if you ask a question, then you can give alternative answers, like, say, for example, is that an apple or an orange or something else? And so that makes it easier to answer. And you can also wait for a couple of seconds to give the person time to find their words.
Yeah. Because that is quite important, isn't it? I think in the book you say that the words are trapped inside her head but just can't get out. And I think that's what children experience, isn't it? So turning to your book, Annika and the Treasure of Iceland. It is an absolutely beautiful book. It is a full-length novel. We're not talking about a children's illustrated book. It is a proper, you could just read it as a book. Well, I did just read it as a novel, just sat down and read it, which was absolutely excellent. Why did you choose to do a novel rather than a children's picture book?
Yeah, I think there are lots of picture books already out there, and also many that deal with selective mutism and that are intended to help a young child. But I was thinking a teenager or an adult, an older person, there isn't much out there, and so I thought I needed to write something to help them. And what I did is I described what it's like for my character and what she experiences, and then I gave her a challenge to deal with this, and then she might find ways how to overcome it.
Because Annika's 21 in the book, isn't she? But
Yeah.
there's a hint in there at the beginning where you say there was selective mutism when she was a child, but that wasn't dealt with, was it?
Yeah. I did it like that because there are many adults living now that didn't have any help as children because the thing was simply not known at the time, and so this is what happens if you don't get any help as a child, then you might have it as an adult and you might not even know what the problem is. You just experience these issues, and so that's why I did it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just tell us a little bit about what happens in the book. Just take us through the story a little bit, but don't spoil the ending.
Yeah, it's a treasure hunt, and it's set in Iceland. And Iceland has a beautiful scenery and many sites, and I try to incorporate this. And as it is an island, you have a road that goes all around this island like a ring, and there are different places that the characters visit, and they have certain challenges to overcome, like riddles, and I give these in the form of a poem. So the characters have to find out where they have to go next and what happens there. And there's also a character with selective mutism, and she goes on this treasure hunt together with others, and yeah, that's basically it.
So why did you decide to set it in Iceland? I mean, it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful country, but why Iceland?
I was on holiday there and I really liked it. And I decided I needed to show this beautiful scenery and the different sides. So this is also shown on the cover. There's a church in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, and it's on the cover in the silhouette. And there's also the Northern Lights, which is a beautiful thing that you can see. And there are different sites all around the country. For example, everything that's related to volcanoes and this sort of activity. And so the characters will experience things when they go on their journey. Yes, there are also beautiful waterfalls. Really so many, and there's a place where you can go on a boat, and it's like a lake with ice in it, and it's really beautiful things.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really liked about the book was the way that each of the characters gradually unfolds, and you find out a little bit more about each of them as the chapters go on. And of course, the main character, Annika, you manage to start unfolding where her selective mutism is, and you put her in all different social circumstances as well that she has to kind of overcome. I really like the way that what you have done is paired her up with somebody And I think there's a part in the car where she's saying that she began to feel relaxed and started to talk. And I think that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Both with adults and children, that once they've found somebody they can talk to, they can start to relax.
Yeah, I think she kind of likes this other person and they come closer together over time. But her main problem is strangers and when people are listening. So I have a scene where she stops talking when others are passing by, and the other person doesn't understand that at first, and so she has to explain things at some point. So they will go back to the misunderstandings.
Yeah. I think he did that very, very well, actually, because there is one part where they're talking and then the rest of the group come over and she just goes quiet and he doesn't understand why that is. But I love the way that the characters don't sort of react negatively to that he just thinks, oh, I'll speak to her about that later. And I think that's really good advice for anybody who maybe is concerned about a friend who might possibly have selective mutism, whether that's a child or an adult, to have that patience.
Yeah, I wanted the characters to be some kind of a role model in a certain way, because maybe it wouldn't have happened that way if they behaved differently. And I also gave my main character certain characteristics and certain behaviors that helped her to overcome her anxiety. For example, she takes a deep breath before she goes to the shop, things like that. Kind of show what she can do, very tiny things that help her.
I think there's some great advice embedded in there. And of course, you finish up with there's a big chunk at the end of the sorts of things that you can do, right from joining groups to working with animals, because she thinks she might want to go and learn horse riding, doesn't she, having seen the horses in Iceland, which is just fabulous.
Yeah, but I'm not saying you have to do this therapy or whatever. I'm just saying there's really things that happen naturally because that's what she had experienced. And I tried to put this in.
Yeah. I think there's some great advice at the end. I like the way that the story unfolds as well. I just think it is lovely. So would you say that the way that you have developed that character, is that fairly typical of selective mutism, or are there different ways that it can unfold?
I think there are different ways. Each individual would be different, but that is just the way I created this character, because I thought this is what I want to show, and so that's why she does what she does.
Yeah. So what would your top advice be for supporting adults with selective mutism?
I think adults need a safe space to be, and understanding and acceptance in the world in general. And that's really something that helps. And if other people knew what's going on, and there weren't so many misunderstandings, and just being nice and friendly is just really important, I think. Never give up, just try to overcome this, and what you can do is face the fear in small steps and just try to do the things you're afraid of. And that would be, if I had to say something in a few words as a final word or so.
Yeah. I think that's generally good life advice as well. I think that is lovely. Yeah. So where can people find out more about your book? Oh, and the other thing I've got to mention as well, of course, is that a couple of years ago, you wrote the most beautiful poem about selective mutism, and sort of takes you through the experience of it, really. So where can people find out more about your book and your poem as well?
And the books are on Amazon. So if you go there, on my offer page, you can find them. I also have a website and social media sites on the usual platform.
And I'll make sure that there are direct links both to the Amazon and to the book in the words that go along with the video. So you can click through and have a little look at the book there now as well. And I think you can download the poem as well. I think I got it on my Kindle, so I think you can download it as well, can't you?
Yeah, they're on Amazon as paperback and ebook, and also free of charge if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription.
Oh, right. Oh, even better. That's fantastic. Oh, that's really good to know. And what else have you got on your website there?
Also a translator, and I teach German, and I have all my publications and my poems and what I've done.
Right, so I'll make sure that there are links through to that as well, so you can go through and see what else, and maybe contact you if people are interested to find out more about selective mutism.
Yes.
And the sorts of things that you write about.
Yes, there's also a contact form.
That is fantastic. Wow, I just think the book is a huge achievement. I can't imagine how long it must have taken you to write a novel of that length, and with so much detail about Iceland. You really feel like you visited the place when you read the book. It's absolutely fabulous. But thank you so much, Dr. Antje Bothin, for coming in and talking all about your book and selective mutism. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome.
Thank you.
And I look forward to welcoming everybody to the next session on Early Years TV.